How many of you live in the house you wanted to live in and thought you'd live in? How many of you drive the kind of cars you figured? How many of you have the kind of position or the kind of job? I'm telling you that there's no text on my screen for a verse because the whole Bible is my text today. Every one of our lives is a result of detours we have taken in our life. Moses never planned to kill an Egyptian soldier. It just happened. And that forever detoured him from being Pharaoh's son, raised by Pharaoh, going to inherit some cool stuff up there in Egypt. But now he's going to run for his life and hide out, way out, as far away enough the Egyptians will give up on him and never bother to come pursue him. A detour. He didn't plan that one. And then he knew what he was going to do forever. He's going to manage his father-in-law's field of sheep, his flock. He's going to be a good shepherd. Married Zipporah. That's a cool woman's name. You'd nickname her Zipper. That's as far as I'm going with it. I just think that's a cool Bible name. And so he married Zipporah. And her father had big herds, big flocks. And he's just the manager of his father-in-law's estate. That's pretty cool. He's running all the sheep and the flocks. He's got it going. That's what he plans to do till the day he dies. And then one day a bush is on fire, but it's not being consumed. And he turns aside. And his life will forever follow the detour he took that day. David was his daddy's boy and also a tender of the sheep and the runt of the litter and maybe the best looking one in the crowd, because it seems pretty clear when you read the Bible account of David's being anointed by a prophet to be the next king that nobody really expected David would be anointed to be anything. I mean, he spruced up his other boys. Get that cowlick down, son. Get that cowlick down. You don't look quite right with that cowlick. Get it down, because the prophet's coming. He wants to see my boys. Take that shirt off. Knucklehead, who told you to wear that? Get your pants pulled up. Getting his boys ready. And the prophet comes. And the prophet smells the produce. Says, nah, it ain't one of these. Nah. This it? Well, yeah. You don't got any more kids? Oh, just David. Just David. You don't see David. David minding his business. He didn't have time to get the cowlicks down. He didn't have time to change clothes. He didn't have time to wash the smell of sheep off of him. They just summoned for him to come. And his life would be forever changed because he took a detour from his plans that day. It's your life. You and I know, you know it's the truth when you look backwards, if you've lived much life at all. You know you are not the result of your great planning. You plan, but then something happens and it turns you traveling a different direction. I have traveled most of my life on involuntary detours. I wish I could tell you that I'm a great thinker and that I'm a meticulous planner and organizer. I have learned many years ago, anybody who works for themselves or you're self-employed, you don't have to punch a clock. You have to learn to plan your work and work your plan. It's easy to plan your work. You can sit down the day before, I got to do this. You can sit down on Sunday and say, this week I have, but it's harder to stay with that plan, and you have to. You can't stay in bed till 8:30 or 9 and then wonder why you're falling behind the curve and stuff isn't getting done. You have to do it. And I wish I could tell you, I do that. I just wish I could tell you that all of my planning and all the things I knew I was going to do are the things that I'm doing today. They are not. I have had so many detours in my life that I would absolutely qualify as an abject failure by anybody's standards if you measure success on sticking with your plans and fulfilling them. But I am comforted in that I can turn through Scripture and find not one biblical hero whose life was the result of his great planning. All of them were the result of an interruption thrown in their life by God and by the circumstances God ordained. Joseph did not plan to be betrayed. He never sat with his brothers and thought, one day I am going to be a high-ranking officer in Egypt. I'll probably be second in command to Pharaoh. No, that never entered his brain. Nor did it enter his brain when his brothers sold him to a caravan as a slave, and he went to Egypt as a slave. He didn't think, I'm going to work my way up the ranks. No, he didn't. He just did what he had to do to survive. He just worked. And somehow, amazingly, he became a bookkeeper for a high-ranking person in Egypt. He probably got some optimism at that time. This is going to be good. I'm working for a high-ranking man. He's got a good-looking wife. They're successful and popular. He didn't know that the woman was going to try to seduce him and then accuse him of trying to seduce her. He didn't know that, and got himself thrown in prison to a false charge. And you and I can say, good Lord, how does a guy even keep going after that? You just do what you got to do to survive. What about your plans? There are no plans. You just hang on for the ride. And you think you're going to stay in prison forever, and then some dude in prison says, I had a dream last night. And the Lord just shakes your brain and says, ooh, you know what I think that means? I think it means this. And you tell a prisoner your dream. You don't know when you're telling. You think Joseph stood there and thought, hey, I bet this dude's going to be a famous baker up in the palace one day. Yeah, and when he's a baker, the Pharaoh will have a dream, and then he'll tell the Pharaoh, I interpreted a dream. I'm going to get out of here. None of that was in his brain. You know that. His life was just a series of God pulling the strings or putting up a detour sign. I know where you think you're going, but here's where you're going. So with that in mind, that they're voluntary and involuntary, there are four things I want to tell you about detours real quick. Number one, sometimes you get there faster. They really do work. Now, I don't know about any shortcuts to heaven, but I will tell you that there are no shortcuts to knowledge unless. This is going to sound like such an old man. How many of y'all know you sound just like your fathers? How many of you old men know good and well, you know the dad that you criticized and griped about and mocked and fussed about? And oh, God, Dad, and now you know you're just like him. My dad used to say, son, if you just listen to me, you'd save yourself a lot of headache. I probably said that to my daughters once or twice. Not more than that, probably, no more than once or twice, before I just gave up on them probably. But, oh, dear God, I think so many times I could have saved them so much misery if they'd have just listened. And then I think, yeah, that's what my dad said, and I didn't listen to him either. You know when I started listening to my dad? When I was about 30. And then I just started remembering things he said. My dad didn't talk much. Most of my dad's talking was when I did something dumb. You understand the difference in that? Like Mom would tell me ahead of time. Mom always tried to educate me. Son, you can do anything you want to do. What do you want to do? I don't know. Go to bed? You know what I mean. My dad would wait till I did something dumb, and my dad, what's wrong with you? I don't know. Well, here's what you should have done. That was my dad. I learned a lot of things after the fact to him. Learned a lot of things ahead of time from my mom. My dad was negative. My mom was positive. That's just the way they were. It's a good balance for me. My mother was philosophical. She had a philosophical answer for everything. In fact, I wrote a story, that got published. Well, I might as well just tell you my 5th story in Chicken Soup for the Soul is coming out next month. November the 4th or so, it'll be available at Barnes & Nobles and any other store you want to buy them in. And so the one coming out is entitled, The Best Advice I Ever Heard. And I wrote a story about my mom and advice that she gave me. It's easy to do because Mom gave a lot of advice. You know when I started listening to it? When I was about 30. And she didn't give it to me anymore. It was just at about 30, I started looking back and remembering, oh man, Mom said this, Dad said that. I wish I'd have done it back then. Now, I'm going to give you parents a little credit. If your kids would have listened to you, they'd have taken a shortcut on their path and got there a lot quicker than they're getting there now. But it's just the nature of the beast. They didn't listen well. And their kids, the fun thing for us is their kids aren't going to listen to them either. My grandkids are going to grow up just as dumb as their parents were because they will not listen to their parents. It's just, your family may be miles ahead of us, okay? I'm not throwing you in the same barrel with us, but I'm just openly confessing that that's the way mine is. They're not going to listen to Mom and Dad. They're going to be dumb until they're about 30, 35. And then they'll start saying, that's what Dad said. That's what Mom was trying to tell me. If you could listen now, you'd probably get there faster. You know why Solomon wrote the book of Proverbs by and large? You know the largest reason Solomon, the wisest king, you know why he wrote the book of Proverbs as far as we can tell? He doesn't actually say why he wrote them. But do you know what you can deduce after you read it? To my sons. To my sons. Sons, forget not. Sons, heed my words. Sons, I mean the book of Proverbs that we love to read those gems of wisdom from, how to behave, how to interact with people, how to live. And Solomon didn't write them to be a wise minister or a philosopher. He wrote instructions to his sons. He wanted his princes to be princes. Act like a prince. You're not just a prince because you're my boy and I'm king. Princes have to act like they're princes. That's why he didn't even want his boys drinking strong drink or wine. He said that. He said, wine and strong drink, that's not for princes. That's for foolish people. That's for people that are depressed and down in the gutter and hard working and out there building bricks for you to build another building. Not for you. You stand head and shoulders above the others. My mother used to say, until age and Alzheimer's and dementia crippled her body, my mother used to say to me when I was walking through a store or a mall with her, my mother would say, stand up straight, son. I'd be walking like kids do you. And my mom would say, stand up straight, son. Why? Nobody cares. I don't know these people. Stand up straight. Everybody looks better when they're standing up straight. Just stand up straight. Good posture is important. Stand up straight. And she used to lecture me till in my 40s, my mom would say, son, stand up straight. Pull your shoulders up. People look better when they stand up. I'm not trying to impress anybody. I don't care. Stand up straight. And my mother, we could, when she was old in the nursing home and somebody in the nursing home would walk by, stooped over, mother would say, look at that. They should stand up straight. As long as she could, she held her shoulders up and her head high because she just thought that's the way people ought to live. You ought to act like you feel you want to live. You want to live high, you stand up tall. You don't walk around slouchy in your clothes looking sloppy. Stand up. You make things look right. That's Mom. Didn't matter to me then, it does now. Now I get out of bed, if I gave in to every pain in my body at 69 years old, I'd be walking about like this. Oh God, that hurts, and hurt. Oh, that thumb, oh, it hurts, oh, it hurts right there. I got a couple of friends my age like that. I've met a couple of boys at golf, they get, what is wrong with you? Oh, I'll tell you this arthritis. Well, then go home, go to bed. Or ignore it and suck it up and stand up. You think we don't all hurt when we swing I have more pain when I swing a golf club than I can describe to you. I'm not telling you about it. I'm going to stand up and hit the ball like I'm 20. Well, okay, I'm in my brain. I know it looks like I'm 80 when I swing it, 90. All I'm trying to tell you is that you and I, we're always looking for the easy path. There is no easy path, but there are shortcuts. There are some detours you could voluntarily take If you could, and that's why Solomon wrote the Proverbs. If you read it carefully, Solomon says, son, if you heed my advice, if you listen to what I'm telling you, you're going to be miles ahead of everybody else. Some people, my dad used to accuse me of it, and he was right. Some people, they can't learn anything from anybody else. They have to learn through the school of hard knocks. And what people have been through the school of hard knocks trying to tell you, if you shut up and listen to them, they can save you from having to go through the school of hard knocks. And that is right. But how many of y'all ever listened to your dad do that and you avoided this? Yeah, that's what I thought. Number two, sometimes because you don't listen, you get there slower. Detours are not always a shortcut. Sometimes they're a mess. But sometimes, you don't ever know till you take a path that it's going to be the right choice or not. Unless you're really, really different than me, you make a lot of gambles in life with your choices you make. I never knew that until I had been a father for about 5 years. You're pretty confident and pretty cocky when you're young, and you get married and you're kind of cocky and you're confident and you're proud of yourself and proud of your job and proud of your wife, your husband, and you have a baby and oh my goodness, we're actually real people having a real family and stuff. This is pretty cool. And then the baby is like growing and I'm talking as a man now, okay? I don't care about you ladies. I don't know how y'all do it. But from a man's point of view, I'm like, oh my goodness, look at my flesh and blood right here. Hey, his diaper's messed up. Would you take care of it? It's my flesh, my blood, my pride, my joy. She's slobbering. Here, do something with her. And thank God the wives just make sure they're always dressed in cute little clothes and stuff. Can you imagine what girls would look like if their daddies were the only ones who went shopping for them? Mine would have probably wore toe sacks with holes cut out for their legs to poke through, cinch them up over their shoulders because I don't know. And instead they wore ruffles and lace and all that stuff. And then they get old enough, they actually start talking and trying to communicate, and then they ask things. Daddy, why? I don't know. Ask your mother. Go talk to your mother about it. I don't know. And then after a while, you start as a man realizing, oh, I'm not going to have answers for these little humans in my house. Why does God let this happen? Well, who said God let it happen? Mama. Well, go ask Mama then. Go ask Mama why God does stuff. She knows. And if you're not careful, you want to start shirking some of those responsibilities. But they need to know. And the problem is sometimes that they're going to actually, as kids, like all the rest of us, they're going to actually not have some things work right in their life. And sometimes that path they have to travel is going to help them and advance them. But sometimes that path is going to slow them down and hold them back. I used to beg my daughters to make good friends, and David Shanks was here for the funeral, and he was talking back in the back after everybody had left. He was just being complimentary and kind, and he said, there's some things you used to say, Brother Carpenter, that I still say. And I was so proud. I was like, I passed on some wisdom. And David Shanks got it. And he's like, he's just flattering me. I'm telling you. Amy, I wish you'd have been here. It's a proud moment for me. And he's like, oh, I do. And I said, well, that's good. And then he said, remember that time you said picking your friends is a lot like picking your nose? Sometimes you end up with a real booger on your finger. Well, I don't think I said that. I don't remember. I think you must have heard that from one of my daughters or something. I don't believe that was one of the pieces of advice I passed on to you, was it? And then he said, and then I used this one here a while back. Remember when you said he's like a bull, he's got a point? I said, yeah, that's okay. That's fine. That's good. I know where you're going with this. I thought you were complimenting. I get it. You don't have to explain the bull one. Just stop right there. But the point that I was trying to make when David thought he heard me say is I had watched a handful of kids start out with a really good year at school, and then they make one bad friend. And then that friend lures them into something like drugs and alcohol and sex, and let's go mess around with this, and let's go vandalize a building. And they don't know how to say no because it becomes their good friend. And then they take a detour. It was going to be a good year. They were going to fly right through that year and make good grades and make their parents proud. And one bad friend and the influence and the power that friend has. And all of a sudden, it's not going to be a good year anymore. They're going to take a long, circuitous route. As pastor, I can tell you, I've gone down to jails a few times over the years. I've sat on the street corner and waited till a kid got out of jail. I've waited for a dad or two downtown Houston after posting bail, sit there and wait. And it was because they took a detour they never planned on. They just didn't make some good choices about people in their lives. So all your detours don't always work out right. But one thing, the third thing is, I share with you, is all the detours in your life change your point of view. Sometimes it's a nice scenic view. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you wind up in the ghetto and hoping you can get out before somebody shoots you. Sometimes you're on a mountaintop and the scenery is beautiful. It's not where you planned to be. It's not the route you were planning to take. And you have no guarantee whether it's going to be a great ride or a bad ride. Number 4, sometimes detours in life change our destination. If I were to ask all of you how many of you planning to go to heaven, everybody here would hold their hand up. If I did heaven like I did your career a while ago, if I just said how many of you are traveling on the same path toward heaven that you started traveling on when you first came to Jesus, most of you would not know how to answer that. Well, I'm on the same path, I think. Yeah. Have you changed any of your theology? Was there anything you once said, you have to do this to be saved, and told your family, you better do this, and made a few enemies, and then after a while you read a little bit more in the Bible, and you read some red letters of Jesus, and you got to where I don't know if that's really one of those things I can tell people they're going to hell for. Well, you travel that road once. You're not traveling it now? You still going to heaven? You sure? And most times the answer is, I'm still going to heaven. I'm just not on the road that I thought I'd be on, making my trip to heaven. How'd you get off the main road you were traveling? I don't know for sure. God threw a detour sign up? Yep, most likely that's what happened. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes we just wind up being deceived and going the wrong direction in life. But the point that I'm trying to make is that none of us are ever going to stay on the same road we were traveling on forever. It's just not in God's design. And that leaves you with 2 choices about the detours in your life. And I don't know how to sum them up better than these 2 words. You embrace them and you endure them. I have surprises yet in store for me. I have been through enough of them in the past that I have learned to just embrace the surprise. When God throws the unexpected curve at me, I just embrace it. It's going to be a different ride than the one I set out and thought I was on, but I'm going to embrace it and enjoy it for a while. Sometimes I just have to endure because they're not pleasant. It's not good. It's painful. But that's your life. Everybody in here has taken at least one detour off the path you planned to travel. Sometimes if you've taken as many as I have, and I have, I'm telling you, that's my life, is detour. It gets easy after a while to start wondering if you're doing the right thing. Depending on your religious background and religious point of view and that of some of your close friends and family, sometimes when God's put in the picture, it becomes even more confusing. When I first stepped away from denomination, don't think it was an overnight easy decision. I had family in a denomination that I was in, and my wife's family was entrenched in denomination that we were both in. And I didn't just one day say, I'm going to be a rebel and walk away. Yeah, it wasn't about rebellion, it was about theology. It's about really not believing. It was unfair for me to carry ordination in a denomination that I didn't believe was actually preaching the whole truth and nothing but the truth. It was hypocritical to preach a sermon because it was part of the liturgy and the expectation and uphold this manual and these standards of holiness and the things that I just didn't think were biblical and couldn't find them. And I had exhausted my search for those things. It wasn't overnight. And then once I finally made that tough decision and said I have to make a change, oh my, I didn't know the devil was actually part of my life until I made that choice. And then I found out I was being deceived by the devil. And then I would get phone calls and lectures and warnings and rebukings. And one guy literally, honest-hearted said, I feel in the Holy Spirit that I must rebuke you. And I said, and I'm going to accept that from you. And now you and I are going to sit down and you're going to show me where you need to rebuke me. He wanted to go so bad. I tied him up for 4 hours, I think it was. I think it was about 4 hours. I know it was well over 2.5 or 3 because I remember the time that somebody came looking for me because I was gone so long. But I would not let him out of. In fact, when he was trying to weasel out, I said, let me explain something to you. I'm very genuine about my faith with God. I'm very sincere. And when someone like you that I respect comes and says, in the Holy Spirit, I feel that I'm supposed to warn you and rebuke you for the path you're traveling, I want to walk through the path I'm traveling with you so you can show me where that path is wrong. And so I made him talk to me about doctrinal positions. Here's what I believe about this. Here's what I believe about that. Tell me where I'm wrong scripturally. And after all those hours, he finally just said, I can't. There's nothing I disagree with what you've said. I said, then why would you tell me that the Holy Spirit told you to warn me? And that good religious man hung his head and said, I think I have to just tell you the truth. I think I just repeated what someone else told me about you. So God didn't tell you to rebuke me. That's what I want to get to. If I talk to God every morning and I think I know what he wants, and if the God that I talked to skipped me and went to you and said, go warn him because he's blind, I need to know where I'm blind. Well, I talked to one of your ex-friends, and he ran you down pretty bad. And he told me some things that you do and you teach and you preach, but apparently none of them are true. And you blame that on God? And then I lectured him at 4 o'clock in the morning. I said, don't you ever in your life tell another human being that the Lord told you to tell them something unless you know the Lord told you to tell them something. You don't ever hear me get in this pulpit and say, the Lord told me to tell you this today. And if you ever do, you better write it down in your book. Because I can think of about 2 times I've done that in 25 years. I like to think the Lord tells me everything to do, but I won't tell you he told me to tell you something unless he really did. Be careful. The detours in life can lead you a long ways away from the main path, or they can put you on the right path and get you where you need to go faster. The main thing for you and I to do, trust God. Put heaven as your goal. How many want to go to heaven? That ought to be 100% in the hand. You want to go to heaven? Can anybody give you a clear path to get there? No. Can anybody tell you what career choice will help you get there best? No. Can anybody tell you who to marry and that spouse will accompany you to heaven and make sure that path is easy? No. Can anybody tell you what job and career to make? No. All we can tell you is make sure your goal is heaven. I want to be saved. I'm telling you that today, God. Heaven's my destination. I want to go to paradise when I die. I want to be right there with you. My feet are on the way to heaven. Now, if you decide I need to change the path I'm on, throw a detour sign up in front of me. I will embrace it. I will turn willingly. and I will follow whatever path you choose for my life. And if it's a painful path, I will endure it. I will tell y'all, Vietnam was not my choice to serve God. And I will tell you that it wasn't a good path, it was a painful path. And I endured 13 months in that sorry place and in that sorry war. But it was God's will. I wasn't sure at the time, but I have been ever since. And I have learned that even when you have to endure a detour, embrace it. God's got control of you and your destiny. He knows the plans he has for your life.